In the secluded town of Cold Hollow, nestled deep within a dense forest, there was an abandoned mansion known only as the Ashburn House. The locals spoke of it in hushed tones, claiming that no one who ventured inside ever returned the same. It had been vacant for over 50 years, its windows dark and hollow, like the empty eyes of a forgotten corpse. A group of 4 friends, Mark, Sarah, Jenny, and Tom, had always been fascinated by the mansion. They had grown up hearing the stories of those who dared to enter and were never seen again. But they were skeptical. Ghosts, spirits, and curses were just tales to scare children, they believed. So, on a cold October night, they decided to prove the legends wrong and explore the Ashburn House. The night was still, with a thick fog clinging to the ground like a shroud. The trees loomed over them as they approached the mansion, their twisted branches resembling skeletal hands reaching out to pull them back. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and decay. As they reached the front door, it creaked open on its own, inviting them in. The interior was even darker than they had imagined, the air thick with dust and silence. Every step they took echoed eerily through the long, narrow corridors. The floorboards groaned beneath their weight, as if protesting their presence. Sarah led the way, her flashlight flickering as she swept it across the walls. The mansion was a maze of rooms and hallways, all of them cold and filled with the scent of mildew. Strange symbols were carved into the wood, and old, tattered portraits hung on the walls, their subjects staring down with hollow eyes. As they ventured deeper, the temperature dropped, and a sense of unease began to settle in. Mark swore he could hear whispers, faint and distant, like someone speaking just out of earshot. The others dismissed it as his imagination, but the feeling of being watched was impossible to shake. In the center of the house, they found a large spiral staircase leading down into the basement. Something about it felt wrong, but curiosity pushed them forward. The steps creaked loudly with each descent, and the air grew colder, biting at their skin. A heavy, oppressive darkness swallowed them as they reached the bottom. The basement was a labyrinth of stone walls and low ceilings. The walls were damp, and water dripped steadily from unseen cracks above. The flashlight beams danced across the slick stones, revealing deep scratches on the walls and the floor, as if something had tried desperately to escape. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from somewhere deeper within the basement. The friends froze, their hearts pounding in their chests. Mark tried to laugh it off, but his voice was shaky. "Probably just an old pipe," he said, though none of them believed it. They pressed on, though every instinct screamed at them to turn back. The whispers grew louder, more distinct. It wasn't just one voice, but many, overlapping, rising and falling like a twisted choir. The voices spoke in a language none of them understood, but the tone was unmistakably threatening. As they rounded a corner, the flashlight beams flickered and dimmed. The darkness pressed in, suffocating them. Sarah's light went out completely, plunging them into blackness. Panic set in as they fumbled to turn the lights back on. In the distance, the whispers grew louder, now accompanied by the sound of shuffling footsteps. "Run!" Jenny screamed, breaking the spell. They bolted back the way they had come, but the path seemed different, twisted, as if the mansion itself had changed to trap them. The walls closed in, the corridors stretching on endlessly. The whispers followed them, growing louder, more frantic. Tom was the first to trip, his foot catching on something unseen. He hit the ground hard, and the others stopped to help him up. But as they did, the whispers turned into a deafening roar, and from the darkness emerged shadowy figures, vague, distorted forms with glowing eyes. They reached out with elongated fingers, their touch icy and numbing. The friends screamed, trying to flee, but the shadows were faster. One by one, they were pulled into the darkness, their cries silenced by the overwhelming void. Sarah was the last to fall, her flashlight clattering to the ground, its beam flickering weakly before dying out. And then there was silence. When the townspeople noticed the group hadn't returned the next day, they didn't bother to search for them. They knew what had happened. Cold Hollow had claimed more souls, and the Ashburn House would remain undisturbed for another generation, waiting patiently for the next group of skeptics to wander in. For in Cold Hollow, some places are best left forgotten, their secrets buried beneath layers of dust and time. But the echoes of the past never truly fade. They simply wait for someone foolish enough to listen.